Welcome to Public Affairs Roundtable, a discussion of current events in the nation and around the world and how they affect the people of Indiana. Here's your moderator, Larry Lough.
Drugs in our society. What are the problems? What are the solutions? Today on Public Affairs Roundtable, we'll take a look at the economic and political impacts on drug use and abuse on our society in Indiana and around the nation. Our panelists are Dr. Jack Moore, Director of the Middletown Center for Chemical Dependency in Muncie, Anna Lamb, Alcohol Education Coordinator at the Ball State University Health Center, who deals in student-related alcohol problems, and David Haynes, an attorney and a member of the Muncie Commission on Substance Abuse and Drug-Related Crime. Dr. Moore is a very basic, how and why do people get involved, get hooked on drugs?
Oh, I suppose there are many reasons for this. In our rather permissive, pleasure-seeking society today, I think if we would look, say, at adolescence, I think adolescents have problems with their peers, their family, their friends, their school, their sexuality, and oftentimes they may use this as an experiment or an escape when they're trying to really develop their own identity. One of the other important things I think we see in industry, in our country, I think industry has a major problem. You have seen and read figures that may vary from anywhere from, say, last year it cost American industry, say, anywhere from $80 to $100 billion in related substance abuse and use. This is really a horrendous figure when you consider job performance deterioration, sickness and accident benefits, workers' compensation claims, overall poor performance, low productivity. So it is a major problem, and I think industry in recent years is starting to address this and develop employee assistance programs in order to help the troubled employee. I think the premise for the employee assistance program, if you have a drop in job performance, it's not the supervisor's intent to make a diagnosis, but if he or she sees a problem with job performance, then they're referred to someone who can give them assistance, all in confidentiality so that there's no necessary feedback between that employee and that supervisor.
What is the approach to dealing with drug problems? Are we dealing with the problem after it's developed, or is there any way to attack the source, the reason why people get involved in the first place?
Well, yes, I think an attempt now is made to deal with this situation. I think an attempt is being made in the school systems through education, development of educational programs, and instruction to students with various parameters. One being address the situation of feelings, address the situation of self-esteem, address the problem of how to make choices, also some educational aspects of what substances are and what they may do to an individual who uses them. I don't think you can take the position that you don't do this, you don't do that. I think that's been learned in the past that this really doesn't work. I think we learned that back during the Prohibition era. We're just not going to have it around so we won't drink. Well, we all know the results of that. I think it's going to be a slow process of education and evolution of this, of what really happens to these people, and using some as examples of what happened to them. Maybe individuals will then take a second look and say, well, maybe I'll make a better choice. Maybe I'll make a better choice between right and wrong and good or bad.
Anna Lamb, you deal with alcohol-related problems of students, of people at the college age, I assume, here at Ball State University. Is it a serious problem?
Well, if you go by a self-report survey that was made in '83, 40% of those students are heavy abusers. That's a lot of folks out of 17,000.
Of alcohol or of?
Alcohol.
Just alcohol?
Just alcohol alone was what the survey covered. The other part of the survey included that 90% of the student body at least used alcohol. Now, there is a difference when we do some assessments on students, whether or not they're into use, whether they're into misuse, or whether they have indeed alcoholism, which is a dependency and addiction, and that requires more services than we are capable of doing. That person generally needs inpatient, followed with some AA, Alcoholics Anonymous groups. We refer people to a variety of inpatient units, such as Middletown Chemical Dependency Unit, Koala, Fairbanks, just to name a few. Anderson has the Anderson Center in Crestview. There are a variety across the state for inpatient units. We try to refer them to the person closest to their hometown, partly because that person also needs family involvement. But most of the time on Ball State campus, we're looking at the problem drinker, misjudgment. It's the thing to do. Everybody does it. Boredom. The problem with the misuse of alcohol, it can get them expelled because they flunk out. It is our purpose through the program to cut down the misuse of alcohol so that we can retain our students and they can develop a more positive lifestyle. It is not our purpose to tell them whether they shouldn't or whether they should drink, but if they're going to drink, how much, why, when, what's appropriate. And we do that through a group format. And we've had one group completed. That group has been very successful. It's a double thrust on education and behavior change. It's not enough to educate. You also have to deal with the behaviors. The second group that we're working with now is halfway through. The third group's going to be starting in the spring quarter. That group they meet as a group for 6 weeks. I see them before the group starts and after on a one-on-one for assessment. Everybody in the group has been referred, so I have to write letters saying to the person they have or have not completed the program, any other recommendations that I might make. I do not run the group per se. I help plan the group. We have a manual now in printing that's going to be a part of that. But mostly I'm there for the assessment. Be sure they're appropriate. They come from housing. They come from the courts. They have to be a Ball State student enrolled in Ball State. It doesn't cost them anything. It's part of a program that we have for them.
Is the problem worse today than it has been?
Is it worse today than it has been? I would say overall yes, in that a lot of times, I would say 15 years ago, for example, a student may have come on campus not knowing whether they wanted to drink or not, and all of a sudden they were hit up with drinking parties and so forth. Nowadays, that decision's been made long before they ever hit the campus. In high school, they have a problem with alcohol. So what we have when we come to the campus is just a continuation. You used to think that if you joined the armed services that they created a problem, everybody drank, all the guys drank, and so forth. That is not the case anymore. It's a budding problem before they ever enter Ball State University or any campus, or the armed services or anywhere else. So it is our purpose here to help them understand what they're doing. These people that in the group have been identified as problem drinkers, not necessarily alcoholic, but problem drinkers.
David Haynes, Muncie Commission on Substance Abuse and Drug-Related Crime. That covers a lot. Who and why are you?
Well, some of us in late '83, just from our own personal experiences, decided we needed some type of a committee or some type of a civic group that got together and tried to do something about chemical and drug abuse in Muncie. And we did finally get authorization from City Council setting up that commission. And that's what we've been doing since, and is trying to pursue ways that we can combat drug abuse or alcoholism and how to treat it and what to do about it in our community.
What is the problem in Muncie?
I think the problem, and we've kind of touched on it with Anna and Jack here, I think it goes back to somewhat of an apathy on the part of our entire society. You know, alcoholism is kind of a family problem. It's not a societal problem. We have laws that punish us if we do it, but in the same hand, we don't provide education in the school system sufficient enough to armor you with the resources you need when you're confronted with the opportunity to drink or use drugs.
Then, do you get good cooperation from the schools, from other people who might be involved in the education of youth in this problem?
I think you get cooperation. Sometimes I wonder if we don't need more doing instead of everyone agreeing. You know, everyone says, yes, we've got a problem, we'd love to do something about it. What can we do? It's kind of like the little red hen, and everyone wants to eat the bread, but no one wants to make it. You know, when it's done, call me and I'll come help you eat it. But we need workers and we need doers that are going to cause something to happen, and may need to start with our legislature or the school boards and implement stronger programs, not to punish particularly, but to educate and help people who have the problem.
How big, how widespread is your commission, and what specific work does it do?
This is our third year, and Anna and Jack are both on the commission here in Muncie. It can be as far-reaching as we want it to be. It is advisory to City Council, so the purpose is for us to seek out things in the community that we think the local government could implement or could use to improve the environment in which we live. And we've looked at workplaces, we looked at home, churches, schools, and all these areas right now have subcommittees that are set up and looking at those areas.
Then, how do we attack the root of it? And is it in the schools? Is it with very young children, relating to their home problems or to their personal problems? Or?
I think these two guys here probably have better information than I, but the first opportunity that children have, I think, of an exposure to drugs is as early as 7 or 8, 9 years old. Isn't that right? Very early. So your education has to be prior to that, or they aren't going to do it. They'll do whatever their peer group tells them. And Jack is involved in treating them after they have the problem. I'd rather see us put more emphasis on what happens before you get the problem.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing, if you remember when we had the chemical people presentation here that came over WIPB, I think it was about 2 years ago, or a year or so, when Mrs. Reagan introduced this program. And this was held down at Central High School in the auditorium. And several meetings were held thereafter. But I don't think the community at that point in time was really ready to address the situation. Other communities, I think, got off to a more rapid start than Muncie did, and we sort of just held status quo for a while. And then when the commission was begun, then you had interest initially, then it waned a little bit, then it's come back, and I think this will now be an ongoing situation. I think maybe the community is really ready to look at this situation. I think the problem was it was so big and so much underground that people really didn't know what to do with it. So if you don't know what to do with it, you sort of look the other way in hopes that it may go away. But we all know that it won't go away until it's addressed and resolved.
Well, is there a reluctance even to address this issue, to say, that's not a problem in my family, it's not a problem in my community?
I think in certain people there may be significant denial, but I think there are enough people in the community that are aware of the problems, especially the industry is, and the school system is. I'm sure you can go into any school and talk to the principal and they'll say, yes, we have some problems. I mean, it's sort of a ubiquitous thing. And I think people are now coming around to the point in time where they're ready to deal with this situation. But I think it's going to be an evolutionary process of how you deal with it and how you solve your problem. Other communities across our country have dealt with this. For example, earlier on, for example, Atlanta, Georgia, the school systems there have begun programs as early as the 2nd grade in drug education for their students, all up through high school. They have developed peer groups of kids who are involved with this who go out and mix with their own peers to get feedback and how to address and handle the situation. Try to educate that person how to say no, not just be like the lemmings and jump over the cliff because the leader is doing this.
If I might interrupt, a lot of people don't understand negative peer pressure or reverse peer pressure, and I think the viewers probably would be interested in that and how to use it to their benefit. And it's a very simple way of doing something. So if you come to me and you're saying, Dave, here, have some pot, smoke a joint with me, or how about a drink, and I'm drinking and I've had too much, and they keep inducing you to have more, what do? Do you feel compelled to go along with the crowd? Well, that's the normal peer pressure, but all you have to do is say, I don't need that, why do you? Or I've had enough, why do you have to drink so much? And you reverse it around on them, and it's a very effective tool, and if you'll try that, you feel pretty good after it works, and you don't have to drink a lot to have a good time.
Yeah, one of the things that we found on one of the halls here at Ball State campus, some of the students on this particular hall were sick of people getting sick on alcohol. They were sick of the vomiting, they were sick of the mess, and the students took it upon themselves to put pressure to bear on the other students that were misusing alcohol and making it quite clear to them, we're sick of this, quit it. They did. And I'm a big believer in that peer pressure can make a difference. And they didn't have any outside influence. No one with expertise, quote unquote, came in. The students said, we're sick of this. And they did something about it. And they didn't condone the behavior. They didn't kid about it. They didn't say the next day, wow, you really had a neat party. They made it very clear, hey, clean up the mess. We didn't. You do it. And students very quickly received the message, hey, this is not popular. And they changed.
Is there a problem in the alcohol industry? Is the industry itself doing something to help clean this up? I see, for example, Seagram's ads where they encourage you to drink in moderation. While at the same time I see some ads in the campus newspaper here at Ball State. One ad of a distiller, maker of alcoholic beverages saying, pass the bottle around, let's find out who the real party warriors are. Is there recognition in the industry that there's a problem here or not? Is there any self-regulation at all? David, you want to?
Not that I know of, not that I'm acquainted with.
I think the only thing that I've seen on the media, on television, has been the ads pointing out the alcohol content of various beverages sold and what some effects are, and caution not to exceed certain limits. But that's the only thing I've seen on television.
The only thing I know about is the Miller Brewing Company and Anheuser-Busch have programs they will bring onto campus for prevention of misuse. But it doesn't say anything about their advertising. But they do have programs on prevention of alcoholism that they will come to the campus.
The political impacts we talked about, how has the state of Indiana reacted? You talk about, David, the legislature might have to set the tone here. They have, in fact, done certain things in terms of enforcement or in terms of stiffening penalties, for example, for drunk drivers. Does a lot more need to be done at the level of the state legislature?
I think there's an awful lot that the legislatures can do, but then they have a political whiplash back at home. If they interfere too much in the privacy of your home and what you do with your own person and your body, then you're going to have people upset about that. And there's a natural balance there between the societal needs and your rights to your personal freedoms. I think a lot of people feel that alcohol and drug use are personal choices. I don't really believe that. I think that you have a duty to your society and to your fellow people, and you can't just be selfish enough to say, well, if I want to do it, that's fine, and if I see Anna doing something, then I don't ever intervene. That seems to be the way most people feel about it. And our legislature, that, as far as the criminal side of it, has laws on all types of drug use and punishments for it. I think a lot of times when people use marijuana, whatever, they feel that it's a justified thing and that our laws are wrong. Young people feel that's improper, that they ought to be able to do what they want because it's a personal choice.
Then what should the legislature do? Are we talking then in terms of money for programs for rehabilitation, for counseling, for education? Is that
Let
the
me give you an
approach?
example. If a person has a drug problem, an alcohol problem, if they don't have the money to pay for a formal treatment program, are there programs available? Can the courts intervene in that person's life and make them take treatment? Right now, as far as I know, they can send them to Richmond for treatment, but it's an open-door policy. They can walk out anytime they want to. So there's no mechanism for your son or a daughter or any husband or spouse or whatever to receive treatment, mandatory treatment, if they have a problem and you wish to make them well. And the legislature might be able to set up some programs, some funding for those types of things.
Dr. Moore, you'd mentioned earlier the facts, the figures on problems in industry with drug use, in terms of what are we losing man hours, in terms of productivity. Has industry, in fact, come to grips with this problem across the board, or are there still some pockets of resistance?
Well, I think industry is starting to come to grips with this, and I think some industries perhaps have been in the forefront. Some industries now are pre-screening all employees as far as application for work, doing urine drug screens, which is part of their pre-employment evaluation. And if they pick up something abnormal in their urine, I think they would choose not to hire that individual. I think if there's probable cause in some industry where a worker's performance is suspect or there's an injury, I think some industry has had drug screening done at that point in time. Now, where this is all going to wash out with the courts, are you interfering with someone's personal freedom? I can't answer that question. But I do know that some industries at least have made this policy and are apparently making it stick.
Is it good policy, do you think?
I think it's good policy to have a healthy worker in the workplace, one that performs well, one that does not endanger himself or endanger his fellow employee. If such an individual would be abusing either a prescription item or a street item or say alcohol and was actually a problem, then I think that problem must be addressed, because I think there are too many things at risk, not only that person's well-being, but maybe his or her fellow employees' well-being.
You mentioned that there's a growing awareness here in the industry, but is it widespread? Are we at a good level of?
I think more and more big industries are addressing this. For example, one would be IBM, another would be Lockheed Corporation. Those are just two that just off the top of my head that are big corporations, and I'm sure there are many others. There are probably many smaller industries that are addressing. For example, the American Occupational Medical Association in the last 2 or 3 years have had symposiums for their physician members on drug abuse and alcohol, and I know there's another symposium this year at the meeting in Denver on alcoholism in industry. So I mean, there's a driving force here to try and intervene and assist in correcting this problem.
Might I insert something here? You know, the economic impact that Dr. Moore is talking about, the lost time on the job, the lost efficiency, and the overall aspects of that on our entire society is a tremendous amount of downtime. It's lost just people's lives who are being wasted in unproductive time on the job, and we all suffer from that. And then you've got the impact of all the money, the big money that's moving around in our society that's all drug and alcohol related. So, you know, if you cut all that off, the international political scene of the drug market, the United States, the cash flow, I mean, it's big business. And a lot of people are making big bucks on it, and those are a lot of times very powerful people. Therefore, your entire political arena is somewhat governed by that. I think it's time to get drugs out of the closet. You know, alcohol is a legal drug. If you're 21, you can use alcohol. Drugs are not legal except by prescription. So people aren't as ready to say, you know, I have a drug problem and go into their employer and talk about it. But we've got to get that opened up so that people can come forward and talk about their problems and get assistance. I've had small business clients of mine, small corporations, come to me and say, Dave, you know, is there some way I can deal with a drug problem? I have a man that's operating a lathe out here, and I know that he has a drug problem. You know, what kind of a little program can I implement, you know, 8 to 10 man corporation? So the employee assistance programs that Dr. Moore is talking about, you know, large ones, IBM or Chevrolet, some of these people that have them, you know, those are fine, but we need them right down on the grassroots level. Everybody needs to have that same program. That's one thing that our commission is looking at now, is can we come up with some employee assistance programs that can be implemented by small companies for their people.
Is our effort good enough, or does it need some coordination from some higher level? Certainly we have the commission, we have various programs on university campuses. Each community seems to be dealing individually with it, but do we need a more coordinated program that really attacks overall?
I think it'd be good to do. I don't know if it's practical, because each community is somewhat different. The persons and the personalities and the politics are all different in every community, and how you deal with them. And the funding is a big problem. And so far, the commission has operated virtually on no funds. It's just persons' time.
One of the things we're trying to do, I'm a board member, a board of directors on the Indiana Federation of Communities for Drug-Free Youth. And we've decided that one of the things that need to happen on the campuses is some kind of state model, some kind of format that we can have sort of guidelines to utilize across our state on those universities. That first meeting is going to happen April 11th. And about 15, 16 different universities and colleges have been invited to express our views and concerns and how can we work together. One of the things I found when I came on campus was everybody's hanging by their toenails out there all by their lonesome. Muncie's out here and Ball State's out here. And you got Anderson over there and Anderson College, and they're all out there by their lonesome. Why can't we work together? And I have found, calling to different universities across the state, they're ecstatic. They're going, yes, let's do it. I need help. Well, I need help. And so I'm one person over here trying to generate some ideas, and why not get a lot of folks together?
Thank you. We'll look for help. Thanks to my guests, Anna Lamb, Dr. Jack Moore, and David Haynes for their participation here today. I'm Larry Lough. Thank you for being with us.
If you